friends, welcome back to Food Prep Guide. We are back with another meal prep video today, and one of my absolute favorite ways to meal prep is in mason jars. Y'all probably know that about me by now, but I absolutely love making pantry mixes, meals in jars, dry mixes, getting all of those ingredients out once, measuring, getting them into jars, and not having to dirty up my kitchen as often, but still be able to enjoy from scratch meals or desserts in this case. Today we are going to be making cinnamon roll mixes in jars. If that interests you, keep on watching. Let's get started.
By the way, if you would like help building your food storage, scroll down to the description box of this video and click this link for our free 1-year food storage plan. We calculated a year's supply of food for one person, then broke that data down into a week-by-week list of items to build your pantry on a budget. We'll send it straight to your inbox. If you're new here, we invite you to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss all of our upcoming food preservation, pantry storage, and gardening tutorials. Now back to the kitchen.
Okay, let's get going. So essentially what we're going to do is put the dough mixture in this jar, and then we will prep the cinnamon sugar mixture in a Ziploc baggie and stuff that down inside the jar so that we can go ahead and get that out of the way as well. So the first ingredient that we are going to need inside of our jars, and one thing to note is that I want to keep the yeast away from the sugar. So basically the salt and sugar is going to go on bottom, and then flour, and then yeast. We're going to put some buttermilk powder in there somewhere. I'll figure out where I want that. But mainly is we don't want the yeast to come in contact with the sugar or even really the salt. The yeast can kind of interact in a negative way, and so can the sugar and the salt interact in a negative way when we're not ready to bake yet. So just keep that in mind when you are layering your jars. So with that said, we're going to start out with 1.5 teaspoons of salt at the bottom of our jar. Doesn't matter what type of salt you use. Whoops, big old clump. Okay, 1.5 teaspoons per jar. I use the Redmond's real salt when I'm baking, and I use the Celtic sea salt when I'm making something like really wanting it nutritious, like our super smooth smoothies or something like that. So next I'm going to do the sugar. We need 4 tablespoons of sugar per jar. I use the Zolka brand of sugar. It's not quite as processed as other sugars, and I highly recommend it. 4. It's probably going to be close to a 1/4 cup. I could just use a 1/4 cup next time and kind of do it kind of heaping, but I'm just going to be precise and do it this way. 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, next I think I'm going to go ahead and do the milk powder. Now when it comes to cinnamon rolls or really any kind of baking mixes, anytime a recipe calls for milk powder, if you swap it out for buttermilk powder, your recipe is just going to be that much better. The buttermilk powder is so good in baking recipes. I highly recommend it. I will link that in the description box below, but also we get it pretty regularly from Azure Standard. So we need 2 tablespoons of either buttermilk powder or milk powder if you don't have buttermilk powder. 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Okay, now we will do our flour. We need 2 3/4 cup of flour. I'm going to measure out of this big old 8-cup measuring cup. Sometimes it's hard for me to get a good measure out of. This is the container that I store my flour in, and sometimes it can be hard to scoop out without getting big clumps in it, which messes with my measurements. So I'm going to do it this way, and for this I will use a funnel. So 2 3/4 cup per jar. 2. I'm going to come back and do the 3/4 later. I have learned that I can't do too much talking when I'm measuring out ingredients because I lose track of where I am and mess up the recipe. 1 and 2. Now let's go back through and do our 3/4 cup. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, 3. Oops. Wow, I barely just had enough in this bowl. Didn't even measure it out first. Okay, that needs a little bit more. That was slightly shy. Okay, so 2 3/4 cup of flour. I'm going to shake this down a little bit before I put my yeast in. Okay, last but not least, we're going to do 1½ teaspoons of yeast. This is the SAF instant yeast. That's what I use for pretty much all of my baking. I'm going to do 1½ teaspoon per jar. And like I said earlier, it doesn't matter how you layer your ingredients when it comes to anything else other than the yeast. You do not want to let that come in contact with the sugar or salt. Okay, I think that's it. Let me review my recipe real quick. Salt, sugar, powder milk, flour, yeast. Yep, okay. So now we are going to add in our cinnamon sugar mixture, but we need to keep that separate because of course that's how you make cinnamon rolls. So we need a separate little baggie. If y'all have any other ideas for how to keep this separate, I am all ears, but this is the way that I have been doing it. So 1 cup of sugar, and then 1½ tablespoons of cinnamon. When it comes to cinnamon rolls, you can make these as cinnamony as you want to, but for us, 1½ tablespoons is enough because it gets a little spicy for our taste buds when we go any more than that. I'm going to get as much of the air out as possible because we want these to fit down into our jars. It's already going to be a little bit difficult because we don't have a ton of space in our jars. So. And there we go. I'll get the rest of these jars and we'll get them sealed up. As far as sealing these jars, I am not going to be vacuum sealing them. That's just personal preference. My reasoning for that is that all of the ingredients in these jars, they are already extremely shelf stable, not even in a vacuum sealed format. These 4 jars will probably only last us maybe 6 months max, and it might even be less than that. So I'm not worried at all about these jars spoiling. But if you want to prep a larger batch, or maybe you don't move through them quite as fast and you want to vacuum seal, you absolutely can. The rule of thumb with vacuum sealing is just if each individual ingredient in the jar can safely be vacuum sealed, then a dry mix made up of those ingredients can safely be vacuum sealed. The only one that people might have questions about is yeast, and it is totally fine to vacuum seal yeast. In fact, that is exactly how I store my the yeast packages that I'm not working through currently. I store them vacuum sealed in the freezer. I have yeast that is 5 to 7 years old that is still totally fine and active, and it's been in the freezer vacuum sealed that way. So it's totally fine to vacuum seal yeast if you would like to. If you are not familiar with vacuum sealing mason jars, there are several different ways to do that. Normally you are going to need an attachment. This is the wide mouth attachment, and then you would put your device, like the handheld WeVac, put that over the hole and vacuum seal that way. Or you can use my favorite brake bleeder pump. I will link that in the description box below. And I'll just go ahead and link the how to vacuum seal anything 7 different ways. We have that video, and I will go ahead and link that in the description box below. As far as how to make these cinnamon rolls, we did go ahead and type up the entire recipe for you on the blog and made it in printable format. So I will link that in the description box. If you can click that link, it will take you to our website where you can click the print button and the recipe will be formatted nicely for you. That's all for today, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.